The morning began with silence, until alarms shattered the air, screens flickering with red alerts that poured across the glass walls of the CEO's office. Michael Reed said, "What the hell is happening?" His voice was sharp, clipped with fear, masked as command. The staff erupted into frantic whispers, their voices colliding into an incoherent storm, as the once pristine environment turned hostile. Emma Collins said, "Sir, confidential files are being leaked in real time. Our system is compromised." Michael felt his breath seize, a bitter taste of betrayal already forming in his throat. Trust dissolved instantly. Every face looked pale. Every loyal gesture felt suspicious. The gleaming empire he built with steel and blood was now crumbling in seconds. He thought of enemies outside, but his gut screamed the knife was inside. Alarms wailed like mocking bells, and all Michael saw were trembling hands, clenched jaws, and walls closing in. The weight of survival pressed heavy. This was not a mistake. It was a declaration of war. The chaos spread like wildfire as Michael stormed into the control room, his voice commanding yet edged with fury. Michael Reed said, "Shut down the servers now." Emma Collins replied, "If we shut them down, we lose everything, sir." The staff exchanged worried looks, every decision suddenly feeling like a trap. James Carter lingered in silence, his eyes cold, as though measuring the moment. Michael's thoughts raced, questioning how deep the breach was, who had orchestrated it, and why now. The walls of the room pulsed with the glow of warnings, as though mocking his lack of control. For years he had crushed rivals, outplayed enemies, and ruled his empire without falter. But now, betrayal festered within. He saw his employees breaking under pressure, some pale, some frozen. This is war, Michael thought, but the question remained. Who fired the first shot? Michael leaned closer to the monitors, his reflection fractured in the glass, distorted like his trust. Michael Reed said, "Trace the breach now. I want the source in 5 minutes." An engineer stuttered, "It's coming from inside, sir." The words sliced through him like knives. Emma Collins said, "That's impossible. We vetted everyone." Silence suffocated the room, the implication heavier than the alarms. Michael thought of the countless deals he made, the enemies he buried, but none cut like betrayal within. His empire was bleeding, and somewhere among his loyal faces, a traitor smiled unseen. The silence cracked as James Carter finally spoke, his voice calm yet dripping with veiled judgment. James Carter said, "It seems someone knows your empire better than you." Michael's eyes narrowed, fury simmering beneath restraint. Emma Collins stepped forward, defensive yet shaken, saying, "We'll find them, we always do." Michael's thoughts raged, loyalty or betrayal, ally or adversary. In that moment, he felt every ally turn suspect, every shadow whisper lies. Michael turned to the room, his voice sharp and unforgiving. Michael Reed said, "Every second we waste, they destroy us. Shut down all external access now." Panic thickened, employees typing with trembling fingers. Emma Collins whispered, "Sir, this may be exactly what they want." Michael froze for a breath, realizing the trap was not only digital but psychological. James Carter stood in silence again, his eyes narrowing, observing. The alarms continued to wail, each pulse echoing betrayal. In that instant, Michael understood, this was no random attack. Someone inside wanted him broken. The storm outside mirrored the chaos within as Michael paced the length of the boardroom, his footsteps echoing like a ticking clock. Michael Reed said, "I want names, I want motives, and I want them now." The staff avoided his glare, their fear palpable. Emma Collins said, "We've sealed access, but someone knew exactly where to strike. This wasn't random, it was surgical." Michael's chest tightened, suspicion gnawing at him like fire-eating wood. James Carter sat silently at the table, hands folded neatly, his calmness a knife that cut deeper than the alarms. Michael thought, control was an illusion, and his empire was suddenly fragile glass. He knew panic would spread beyond these walls, into investors, into the media, into every enemy waiting for a crack. He whispered to himself, "Trust no one, not anymore." The words hung heavy, turning allies into shadows, friends into suspects, and the air into poison. The phones began to buzz, glowing with investor calls demanding answers, each vibration shaking Michael's resolve. Emma Collins said, "Sir, the stock value is already dipping. News outlets are circling." Michael slammed his palm on the table, fury trembling through him. Michael Reed said, "Let them circle, but they will choke before I fall." James Carter finally leaned forward, voice steady, almost mocking. James Carter said, "Perhaps this empire isn't as invincible as we thought." The room stilled, as if the storm outside had crept in, suffocating every breath. Michael's mind screamed that Betrayal was already seated at this table. The IT director stumbled in, his face pale, words cracking like broken glass. He stammered, "The breach spreads deeper. We can't contain it." Michael Reed said, "Deeper? How much deeper?" His voice was a growl, fury masking dread. Emma Collins replied, "They're inside the vault files, sir. Contracts, acquisitions, everything." Silence thickened, employees holding their breath. Michael felt a burning in his chest. Years of ruthless victories meant nothing now, as his secrets threatened to unravel. He glanced toward James Carter, but the CFO's stare was blank, unreadable. A thought clawed at Michael. Someone inside knew his empire's every weakness, every locked door. The storm outside thundered, and the sound reverberated like a gavel sealing fate. Michael leaned forward, eyes narrowing into fire. Michael Reed said, "Lock every channel, shut down the vault before they strip us bare." Emma Collins hesitated, fingers hovering above her screen, whispering, "That will cripple us internally." James Carter's lips curved as he muttered, "Sometimes sacrifice is necessary." Michael's fury surged, but beneath it lay a seed of dread. Sacrifice was exactly what the betrayer wanted. The truth lingered near, but every shadow kept it hidden. The lights flickered, alarms drowned out by the deeper hum of systems failing. Michael turned to the room, his voice thunder cracking through silence. Michael Reed said, "Whoever is feeding them, I will find you." His gaze pierced every face, suspicion carving scars where trust once lived. Emma Collins said, "Sir, morale is breaking. Your people are scared of you, not the enemy." For a moment, Michael faltered, the realization heavy. James Carter sat motionless, his stillness colder than betrayal itself. Outside, the storm raged, but inside Michael felt the true storm was human. The morning broke with gray light filtering through the storm, but inside the office, the tension was darker than night. Michael Reed said, "Every department will be audited, loyalty tested, secrecy enforced." His voice cut through the air like a blade. Emma Collins whispered, "Sir, some will see this as punishment, not protection." Michael turned sharply, eyes blazing, saying, "Then let them fear me if they cannot respect me." James Carter watched from the corner, his silence pressing heavier than words. Michael's empire once thrived on fear of rivals. Now it trembled under fear of itself. The storm within was no longer silent. It roared through every corridor, demanding sacrifice. Michael felt that if he didn't strike now, the traitor would bury him alive. The boardroom became a battlefield of whispers, alliances fracturing like glass under pressure. Emma Collins said, "Sir, morale is breaking. We need reassurance, not fear." Michael Reed said, "Reassurance won't stop a traitor hiding among us." James Carter leaned forward, his tone smooth as poison, saying, "Perhaps the traitor isn't who we expect." Michael's pulse quickened, the words like bait, wrapped in truth. Eyes shifted around the table, suspicion spreading like wildfire. The company he built with iron discipline now felt like a powder keg, ready to explode. Michael knew one spark, one accusation, could tear everything apart. News broke across multiple screens, headlines screaming of a leak inside Reed Global. Reporters outside shouted questions, their voices muffled but urgent. Michael Reed said, "They know too much already. Someone fed them." Emma Collins shook her head, her voice cracking. "This is destroying us from within, sir." Michael gritted his teeth, rage boiling. James Carter's calm tone cut like ice. Sometimes empires collapse from the weight of their own secrets. Michael felt the walls press closer, the storm inside louder than the one outside. He thought, enemies outside wanted his blood, but betrayal within had already pierced the vein. The walls seemed to breathe with paranoia, every whisper louder than thunder. Michael Reed said, "We'll purge every division until we find the traitor." Emma Collins raised her voice, desperation cracking through her loyalty. "Sir, if you turn this place into a prison, you'll lose more than files, you'll lose people." James Carter smirked faintly, leaning back, murmuring, "Perhaps that's already begun." Michael's blood burned, suspicion wrapping tighter. But somewhere deep he wondered if Emma was right. The empire he built on loyalty now demanded obedience drenched in fear. The storm broke louder outside, lightning flashing across the skyline as if mocking the collapse within. Michael Reed said, "Every empire falls when its core rots. Mine will not." He raised his voice, each word searing. Emma Collins whispered, "Sir, people are terrified. They see an enemy in every face." James Carter's voice slipped softly through the chaos. "Fear sharpens the blade." Michael felt rage coil like a serpent inside, but behind it was dread. The traitor was watching, feeding and waiting for his next move. This was no longer a company. It was a battlefield. The company corridors felt more like prison walls, every glance cloaked in suspicion. Michael Reed said, "I want every password reset, every channel locked, every shadow examined." Emma Collins whispered, "Sir, this is turning employees against each other. They whisper of chains, not leadership." Michael ignored her warning, fury burning as trust decayed. James Carter stood in the shadows, his smirk faint, his silence louder than screams. Michael's empire, once proud, had become a web tangled in fear. And within that web, the spider waited unseen, watching him lose control thread by thread. In the security hub, walls of screens displayed shifting codes, contracts, and corrupted files. Michael Reed said, "They are too precise. They know our heartbeat." Emma Collins replied, "Then it must be someone inside." Michael's chest tightened, her words cutting deeper than any alarm. James Carter leaned casually, saying, "If trust is gone, perhaps it was never real." Michael clenched his fists, realizing the saboteur wasn't just breaking systems, but tearing his people apart. He felt his empire strangled by an unseen hand, and the face of betrayal was growing clearer, yet still hidden. Whispers turned into accusations, each voice a dagger in the silence. Michael Reed said, "We will root them out, one by one, until the truth bleeds." Emma Collins shook her head, voice trembling. "You're breaking the trust you need most." James Carter's eyes gleamed, and he murmured, "Fear sharpens loyalty, or destroys it." Michael realized the saboteur's plan was not only to steal but to fracture him from within. The empire cracked, alliances splintered, and even his closest allies stood at the edge of doubt. Betrayal was no longer hidden, it was breathing in the same room. The storm outside cracked louder, shadows crawling into the room. Michael Reed said, "Every name, every login, every detail will be examined. No one is above suspicion." Emma Collins whispered, "You're treating allies like enemies." Michael snapped, "Enemies have already been made." James Carter smiled faintly, his silence feeding the fire. The weight of betrayal pushed down on Michael's chest, each breath heavier. He knew his empire had been turned into a cage, but he wondered who held the key. The walls whispered with secrets, and none belonged to him. The night deepened, and the building seemed alive with whispers. Michael Reed said, "We are bleeding, and someone here sharpens the blade." Emma Collins answered softly, "Sir, suspicion is tearing us apart faster than the enemy." James Carter leaned forward, his words calculated. "Perhaps the enemy is sitting closer than you realize." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Michael's heart pounded, his empire crumbling one breath at a time. He felt the saboteur was no longer in the shadows, but standing at his side. The first crack of truth came like lightning, searing and sudden. Reports showed access codes only a handful could reach. Michael Reed said, "This was no accident, it was deliberate." Emma Collins whispered, "But these codes, they belong to the highest circle." Michael's breath hitched, suspicion digging claws into his chest. James Carter folded his hands, saying, "Which means betrayal is closer than we thought." Michael realized the saboteur wasn't hiding in shadows. They were at the very heart of his empire. The revelations spread like fire across whispers, each one sharper than knives. Michael Reed said, "Whoever did this knew my empire, as if it were their own reflection." Emma Collins pleaded, "Sir, think carefully. Accusations could destroy us more than the truth." James Carter's calm voice lingered, "Sometimes truth is destruction." Michael's heart pounded, every face now a mask of suspicion. He thought of loyalty, but all he saw were daggers waiting to strike. The CFO finally broke silence with precision. James Carter said, "Perhaps the person who guarded you most is the one who betrayed you." Emma Collins froze, her lips parting in shock. Michael Reed turned, disbelief and fury colliding. "You dare accuse her?" His voice thundered. Carter's smirk held steady. "Sometimes betrayal hides behind loyalty, Michael." Emma's eyes watered, whispering, "You think I could do this?" The room fractured, allies questioning, loyalty breaking. The traitor's mask was shifting, and Michael realized trust was no longer possible. Michael's fury ignited, his voice shattering silence. Michael Reed said, "She has stood beside me through every storm. How dare you?" James Carter replied smoothly, "And who else had access to everything?" Emma Collins shook her head, desperation spilling through her words. "I would never betray you." Michael felt torn between rage and doubt, trust and suspicion. Every heartbeat echoed louder than the thunder outside. The traitor's shadow loomed, but whose face it wore remained uncertain. The storm climaxed with thunder shaking the building, as if echoing betrayal's roar. Michael Reed whispered, "The traitor is among us." Emma Collins cried, "Sir, you must believe me." James Carter smirked, his silence confirmation of his poisoned seed. Michael's chest burned. Truth was no longer hidden. It was clawing through every word, every glance. His empire, once untouchable, had become a throne surrounded by knives. He knew one wrong step, one wrong choice, would shatter everything beyond repair. The boardroom transformed into a battlefield where silence carried sharper blades than words. Michael Reed said, "I will not fall to shadows." His voice thundered, commanding the storm outside to bend. Emma Collins whispered, "Sir, you're fighting ghosts while the walls collapse." James Carter leaned forward, smirk coiled like a serpent, saying, "Sometimes ghosts are real." Michael's breath grew heavy, fury burning into dread. The traitor was no longer hidden. Betrayal's hand reached for his empire's throat. He clenched his fist, realizing every second mattered. This was no longer about survival. It was about conquest or ruin. The room cracked louder, rattling windows like a warning. Michael Reed said, "If it's war, then I'll fight until only one stands." Emma Collins pleaded, "Sir, if you break them, there'll be nothing left to save." James Carter muttered coldly, "That's the point." Michael's chest burned as he realized Carter's game, destruction disguised as loyalty. He thought, if betrayal lived in silence, then revelation must roar. Rage surged. He swore no enemy, no traitor, would walk away unscathed. His empire's soul rested on this final confrontation. The traitor's noose tightened as files appeared on screen, revealing deals, contracts, secrets fed to rivals. Michael Reed said, "This is treason." Emma Collins gasped, "But these documents, they come from your office." Michael's heart pounded, proof designed to frame him. James Carter's calm voice pierced, "Sometimes the empire falls from its king." Michael's fury erupted, eyes burning. He thought, the traitor wasn't just breaking his empire. They were burying him inside it. Every breath was a war cry. This was the moment where survival demanded fire. Michael's fury snapped into thunder, his voice crashing like the storm outside. Michael Reed shouted, "You think you can bury me with my own empire?" Emma Collins whispered, "Sir, don't let rage blind you." James Carter leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. Blind kings fall hardest. Michael's chest burned with defiance, every muscle taut, his legacy teetering on ruin. He thought, this was no longer betrayal, it was assassination. He swore if he burned, he would drag his betrayer into the fire with him. The climax reached its apex as the storm roared. Michael Reed said, "This is my empire. No traitor will steal it." Emma Collins shouted, "Then prove it. Fight for truth, not fear." James Carter whispered venomously, "Your empire already belongs to me." Michael's eyes flared, realization cutting like steel. Carter wasn't hiding anymore. The betrayer stood revealed, calm and smirking, as if the empire's collapse was his victory. Michael clenched his fists, every fiber of his being burning with fire. The boardroom became a war zone. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm within. The boardroom reeked of smoke and tension, though no fire had touched it. The fire was in every breath, every word unsaid. Michael Reed said, "The empire is mine, even broken. It carries my blood." His voice shook with steel, but weariness cracked through. Emma Collins leaned forward whispering, "Sir, what you built stands on the edge, and the ground beneath it is vanishing." James Carter's calm smirk carried poison. He said, "Perhaps the edge is where kings belong, always looking down, never realizing the ground is gone." Michael's thoughts spiraled, memories crashing like glass. Boardroom victories, contracts signed, rivals destroyed. He felt pride and grief battling, each heavier than the storm that had passed. Betrayal unveiled itself not as a single act, but 1,000 small cuts, each one he had ignored until now. He whispered, almost to himself, "If kings fall, they fall standing." Silence roared. Loyalty was gone, and all that remained was ruin disguised as victory. The city below flickered with life, unaware their empire's heart bled out in silence. Michael Reed said, "Every empire ends, but I refuse to let mine die quietly." His words vibrated with anger, but sorrow clung to each syllable. Emma Collins replied softly, "Sir, your fight has turned against your own people. Your reflection is now their enemy." James Carter leaned closer, saying, "Power is a game, Michael. The one who plays without fear wins." Michael's fists clenched. Rage boiled, but beneath it, the weight of inevitability pressed down. He thought of investors who had once worshipped him, employees who had once trusted him, rivals who had once feared him. Now each one saw only cracks, weakness exposed. He felt stripped bare, his empire naked against the world. Emma's voice wavered as she whispered, "Choose carefully. The cost of ambition is already higher than your throne can bear." The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, as Michael realized the choice before him was not victory or defeat. It was what kind of man he would die as. The thunder rolled into silence, leaving only breathing, shallow and uneven. Michael Reed slammed his fist on the table, his voice cracking. "I will not bow, not to enemies, not to ghosts." Emma Collins whispered, "Sir, if you refuse to bend, you will break." James Carter smirked, leaning forward with quiet malice. "And when you break, I'll inherit the ashes." Michael's mind spun with images of his rise, the rivals buried, the alliances forged, the sacrifices he demanded. Pride told him to fight, reason told him he had already lost. Emma's voice cut through, soft yet fierce, "Do not let him win by letting fear rule you." Michael felt torn between fire and ice, ambition and ruin. He thought, kings are remembered not for victories, but for how they face their end. His chest heaved, every heartbeat louder than the silence, every glance toward Carter a promise of vengeance. Yet the truth clawed inside him. Vengeance would not save the throne, only scorch the ruins deeper. The weight of ambition pressed like chains, and the silence turned unbearable. Michael Reed said, "Power was never stolen. It was earned piece by piece with sacrifice." His voice shook. James Carter whispered coldly, and now sacrifice will bury you. Emma Collins' cry cracked the silence. Sir, stop, this war is devouring you. Michael's eyes burned with tears unfallen, rage and sorrow braided into one. He thought of the years climbed to the top, the nights spent crushing competitors, the mornings spent alone. Every choice carved his throne from stone, but now that throne was built of dust. His empire had not been taken, it had rotted from inside, and he had led it. He whispered, "Power demands blood, perhaps it demands mine." The words hung like knives, cutting the air, leaving silence raw. Emma's tears flowed freely, but Carter's smirk deepened. Betrayal had not only stripped Michael of control, it had made him doubt if he deserved any. The storm outside cleared, but its echo lived in the silence of the boardroom. Michael Reed whispered, "My empire may fall, but I remain unbroken." His voice carried steel, though sorrow weighed it down. Emma Collins whispered, "At what cost, sir? The ashes are all that's left." James Carter rose slowly, smirk carved into his face like a crown. His silence spoke louder than thunder. He had won, even without seizing the throne. Michael's chest burned with rage, but beneath it, the hollow truth cut deeper. Ambition had devoured him, leaving only shadows. He thought of the empty chairs around him, allies gone, trust burned. He realized ambition demands all, and it had taken everything: power, people, pride. Michael stood tall, but his throne was ash, his kingdom gone. He whispered to the silence, "If kings are remembered for how they fall, then let my fall be fire." The silence swallowed him whole, leaving the boardroom heavy with ruin, betrayal, and the ghost of an empire.